Harry Osborn may have been Peter Parker's best friend at one point, but he eventually became the next Goblin, and as a result, this becomes a heartbreaking conflict. This is because he thought Spider-Man killed his dad, right? Well, yeah, but it's a lot more than that. As much as I love the Sam Raimi movies, there are unfortunately some flaws with James Franco's portrayal, having read some of the comics. Not only are we going to take a look at Harry's character, but also Norman and their alternate personas, the Green Goblin. The Green Goblin made his debut in Amazing Spider-Man number 14, and it starts with him being covered by a shadow as he works on his broomstick. He offers the Enforcers a plan to help them get revenge on Spider-Man by suggesting director B.J. Cosmos and the web-slinger himself to make an agreement to film a movie about him. Arriving in Hollywood, he agrees to rehearse the fighting scene with the Goblin and the Enforcers, thinking they were just actors. But he quickly realized it was a trap, still captures the Enforcers again, and tricks Goblin into thinking he defeated him by simply hiding in a small lake. The second time he appears is number 17, where he overhears about a fan club Flash, Liz, and their friends are running. He saw this as an opportunity to attack him there. Everyone thought it was all an act, except Johnny Storm, the Human Torch. He spotted 3 thugs on the balcony, prepared to shoot Spidey, and then decided to take action and fend them off. For a while, he unintentionally kept Goblin occupied, so Spidey could switch to Peter and assure Liz he's always been there as Spidey was. When he returns to the battle, he overheard his aunt being sent to the hospital and left Johnny to deal with Goblin without a second thought. Not wanting anything to do with him, he and Torch simultaneously threw a fireball and pumpkin bomb, which exploded into bright sparks around the ladder, allowing Goblin to escape. In number 23, he persuades Lucky Lobo and his mob to join him, which they reject. But he meets up with a criminal who gives him a list of money he made from selling joints. He gave it to Frederick Foswell, who was once a criminal himself, but is later rehired as a reporter for the Daily Bugle. He showed it to Jameson, and they gave it to the police. Ready to swing into action, Spidey spots a few of Lobo's men running away from the cops, only to be stopped by Goblin, forcing them to reveal their location. He noticed Spider-Man on his back, and lures him to Lobo's headquarters, tricking him and Lunky to occupy each other. But Spider-Man successfully overpowered everybody, and left the police to take care of them, which frustrated the Goblin when he found out on the news. He has made appearances after that, but basically, Green Goblin was just a petty criminal who wanted to own more properties and become more powerful. The first 30 issues were a comedy mixed with a crime mystery, which is why Goblin's real identity was always hidden, until number 39, where both our hero and the villain were unmasked. Although Norman Osborn made his official debut in number 37. In number 40, they fought for a bit, until Spidey knocked him into vials of chemicals mixed with wires, which wiped out his memories. That was until number 96, when he gained his memories back, and thus, Green Goblin has returned. Number 121 and 22, however, took a heartbreaking turn. He kidnapped Gwen Stacy and brought her to the George Washington Bridge while she was unconscious. He pushed her off, Spider-Man tried to catch her with a web line, but all it did was snap her neck, killing her. Meeting up with Goblin at a warehouse, he mercilessly attacked him, but hesitated for almost killing him, which gave Goblin time to summon his glider to stab Spidey, only for him to dodge and end up killing himself. Norman Osborn was a greedy, ruthless businessman who always distanced himself from his son Harry and never connected with him. He even double-crossed Mendel Stromm, who was responsible for most of his creations, by reporting him to the police and told them he robbed so much money from him. This is why he tried to get revenge on him in number 37. Looking at one of his experiments to see how much they would be worth, a compound started to turn green and bubble, which caused an explosion, turning him even more mad, yet powerful, and became the Green Goblin. What Sam Raimi did, however, was rewrite him as a scientist who was trying to develop an enhancement serum for the military. Because of the side effects from one of their tests, Stromm stated they had to start over, which Norman disputed, but the military agreed with, so they were given 2 weeks to come up with a fresh experiment. Still, Norman was adamant and decided to try it on himself late that night while everyone was away, which is what led him to turn into the Green Goblin and eliminate everyone he contracted with. While Willem Dafoe got Goblinside as an insane lunatic, right? His portrayal as Norman isn't anything like his comic book counterpart. Not to mention, he never wanted Spider-Man to join him. See, in number 40 he says, "I selected you because I knew the underworld would respect anyone who could defeat you. But you thwarted me during our first encounter." In other words, he just wanted to kill him so he could rule New York. Whereas Dafoe's Green Goblin decided to kill him only because he rejected his proposal. Where Sam Raimi got the idea of Goblin pushing Spider-Man to join him was Ultimate Spider-Man by Brian Bendis, who wrote the characters from the 60s to blend in with the early 2000s. But the reasons for it are different just as much. Raimi's Green Goblin tried to persuade him because of his amazing abilities and used his own good intentions against him. With Ultimate Norman Osborn, he's the creator of the genetically engineered spider that would bite our hero, and therefore to him, that makes Spider-Man his property. Of course, other differences include looking a lot like the Hulk, producing organic fire abilities, and leading the Sinister Six. But one of the similarities Ultimate Goblin has with Stan Lee's Goblin is that Norman is still the ruthless, unloving father and businessman. In fact, from what I've gathered, most comics usually follow this trope. Some of you may prefer Norman being a more shady character where he tries to help somebody other than himself, maybe because it gives him more personality and weight, which I understand. But the thing about Norman being ruthless, greedy, power-hungry, and abusive is that it has a greater impact on Harry becoming the next Green Goblin. In Stan Lee's run, Peter and Harry met in college, and the latter didn't think highly of him at first. Everyone thought he was a cold, ignorant jerk showing off his intelligence, when all he was thinking about was his personal problems, which distracted him from anyone trying to befriend him. That was until number 39 when he tried to console Harry about his relationship with his father. When he lost his memories as Green Goblin, he became more loving to his son, and he became close friends with Peter as he gave him a rent-free apartment. Harry always resented Spider-Man even before Norman's death, blaming him for damaging one of his father's plants, unlike the Raimi movie where he didn't think much about him until he saw him standing over his father's corpse. For a while, Peter was in a relationship with Gwen, and Harry with Mary Jane, but eventually she broke up with him and decided to flirt with Peter. Therefore, Harry started to get mad at him and treat him badly. This is what caused him to take pills and drugs in the hopes of making him feel better than before, which unfortunately only made him feel worse. Speaking of worse, what we never got to see in any of the movies or TV shows, as far as I remember, was Spider-Man forced Goblin to look at his unconscious son at the hospital, which made him vulnerable and faint, making this the second time Norman lost his memories. This is backed up by his father taking him home for a surprise party until Harry started having the same problem, leading Norman to yet again remember Goblin and Spidey. Before Peter went for revenge on him, he went to talk to Harry, who sadly was losing his mind and didn't think he would be much, so he left him there. After the battle at the warehouse, a silhouette is seen watching the web-slinger walk away from it and took the costume in his possession, which turned out to be Harry himself, who suspected that Peter has always been Spider-Man, and then he made his first appearance as the Green Goblin in number 136. Also, do you know what happens when Harry first attacked Peter and MJ? She survives the explosion, and while laying on a bed in the hospital, Peter has flashbacks to losing Gwen Stacy to Norman. His memories haunt him for a little bit, but it also shows he's willing to learn from his mistake and be better for Mary Jane. Ultimately, Harry married Liz Allen, and they had a son named after his grandfather, nicknamed Normie. The last time Harry became Green Goblin was in a related series called Spectacular Spider-Man. In number 200, the combatants fought in the Osborn Foundation as Spider-Man tried to remind him that life has always been worth living, no matter how many burdens they went through. As Goblin set a timer to detonate the building, he remembered his own son and Mary Jane were still there. So he successfully moved everyone, including the wall crawler himself, out just in time for the building to explode. Unfortunately, while they were making amends, Harry collapsed and was slowly dying as he was taken to the hospital. So, how does this compare to the Raimi movies? Harry in Sam Raimi's universe has been going to school with Peter since they were kids. After Mary Jane breaks up with Flash, he puts the moves on her and they start dating. He's always been trying to impress his father with his relationship, but because of the incidents Norman had with Spider-Man at the Unity Festival and the burning building, he starts to avoid everybody. Harry catches Peter and MJ about to kiss at the hospital and reveals his pain to his father, which leads Goblin to use her as bait in the final battle. Next time Harry is seen, he spots Spider-Man's silhouette standing over his father's corpse, believing to have killed him, and swears to get revenge. 2 years later, Harry still holds the same grudge against him. Between that, feeling humiliated by Spider-Man saving him, and shutting down the Tritium, he gets drunk at John Jameson's engagement party and takes his anger all out on Peter. When Dr. Octopus brings the hero to him, he removes his mask and is shocked to see it was his best friend. In the aftermath of the fight, Harry sees his father in the mirror and tells him to take his vengeance. Reluctant, Harry throws the dagger, which shatters the glass, and is led to the Goblin's lair. In the third film, Harry finally tries to get his revenge, but Peter outsmarts him with the web line and knocks him out, which gives Harry amnesia. When MJ kissed him, she just realized she cheated on Peter. Therefore, his stress and memories came back to him. He and Peter had another fight when the latter found out it was his plan to pressure MJ into breaking up with him. Before the last battle with Sandman and Venom, Harry's butler reveals his father was indeed stabbed by his own glider. He launches his body between Spidey and Venom, which caused him to get stabbed instead. Upon Venom's death, Peter and Harry make amends, and then he dies seconds later. Now don't get me wrong, his character arc in this trilogy is straightforward, but after reading some of the old comics, I noticed some flaws with the way James Franco's character was written. He dismissed Peter's spider analysis of how they defend themselves and uses it as a pickup line to impress Mary Jane, the girl whom both friends have a crush on. He brought up his grudge at Peter's birthday dinner when he should be happy for him. He slapped Peter, humiliating himself and his friend when nothing was his fault, and they have a fight over Mary Jane. Those things aren't very best friend-like. But here's what I think is the biggest issue with Raimi Harry. Again, in the original comics, Harry was taking a lot of drugs, which drove him insane, something James Franco's Harry never took. Writer Gerry Conway, one of Stan Lee's successors, who had drug experiences himself, had this to say. With psychedelic drugs, hallucinogens, if they've been misused, there is a potential additional hallucinogenic experiences that are completely beyond your volition. I can imagine Harry getting hit by something like that in the fragile emotional state following the death of his father and losing touch with reality as a result. Besides, I never had any intention of getting rid of the Green Goblin as a concept forever, so it all came together. Sam Raimi's Harry Osborn didn't have an opinion on Spider-Man until the first film's ending, where he approached him standing next to his deceased father, assuming he must have killed him. Then we spend 2 more movies where most of the time he still blames the hero for it, even after trying nothing to achieve his hope for revenge, only for someone that isn't Peter to tell him the truth. Whereas Harry in Earth 616 was freaking out, tried to follow Peter, and found the two fighting in a warehouse. Although we don't directly see how Harry came to the conclusion that Spider-Man killed his dad on purpose, it's possible that he may have had a hallucination that Spidey picked up the glider and intentionally stabbed him, or he just saw him pull the glider out of him, and his insanity led him to believe that he killed him. Regardless, the unloving father plus his frequent use of drugs led him to become the second Green Goblin a few issues later. In other words, unlike the Raimi movies where he held a grudge against him for at least 2 years without taking anything, comic Harry attempted his revenge shortly after his father's death. Because of this, I think what's arguably the issue with Raimi Harry is that since Spider-Man 2 takes place 2 years after the first movie without a single dose, he could have spent all that time figuring out how wrong he likely was. So Harry only has to quickly assume Spider-Man killed his dad without any evidence and swearing vengeance to end the first film with Peter having a self-doubt kind of vibe as he moves on with his life as a superhero. Now, I hope nobody takes this as a personal attack against Sam Raimi, the cast, or the fans, because that's not what I'm here to do. I'm making this video to highlight the source material. Overall, the Raimi trilogy has its pros and cons. Its growing popularity has proved that superhero movies can be successful. It's one of the reasons we have the MCU, and it's a part of what made me the Spider-Man fan I am today. But on the other hand, it changed the way we look at Spider-Man and the supporting characters as a cast. Because of nostalgia, it drove many young YouTubers to make videos misrepresenting the home trilogy as if it failed its purpose, drowning in clickbait titles and thumbnails. Therefore, it caused many people to turn away from Stan Lee's work and treat the Raimi trilogy like it's a fundamental rule of who Spider-Man, including the cast, are and supposed to be. Now, don't get me wrong, these characters are fiction, and the writers can do whatever they want. After all, Spider-Man has been reimagined in various interpretations. Like in Ultimate Spider-Man, Harry became the Hobgoblin with no connection to Roderick Kingsley. Liz Allen became Firestar instead of Angelica Jones. The Venom symbiote became a bioexperiment rather than an alien, and Scorpion became a clone of Peter Parker. But at the same time, when you look at the Raimi movies and compare them to the original source material, the idea of Harry taking drugs makes way more sense. On top of all that, from what I've heard, some people say that while Doc Ock is Spider-Man's greatest enemy, Green Goblin is Peter Parker's. I think the reason for this is because Norman and Harry have turned into manipulative sadists who caused so much chaos to his personal life by threatening his loved ones, watching him quietly from a distance, and knowing his secret identity that they could reveal it to the world any time. That's what makes their friendship heartbreaking. As a matter of fact, Harry has never been Spider-Man's best friend. He's actually had a much closer friendship with Johnny Storm from the Fantastic Four because he would often butt heads with them, team up with them, or take inspiration from them. To know more of what I'm talking about, watch my video, The Human Torch, Spider-Man's True Best Friend.